Better Impact is our Alive Academy Platinum sponsor. So together we're unlocking the power of volunteerism. They are a wonderful partner for us and supporter of the work that we do. So we thank them for their support. We have the Alive 2025 annual member meeting coming up. So please mark your calendar to join us on Thursday, December 4th from 1:30 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to look at the 26th Board of Directors, some bylaw revisions, preview some of the initiatives that are coming up for the next year, and your voice absolutely matters. So a quorum of 10% of the members, which is 105 plus people, is required to do official voting. So we hope you can set aside some time to join us as we look forward and backwards celebrating what we have accomplished this year. The National Summit on Volunteer Engagement is moving. We're excited. We've got early bird pricing starting. It will be March 18 to 20 in Sacramento, California. So come join us, ignite your passion, unlock potential, connect and collaborate, and just stay tuned because we're going to share updates as we get closer and closer to this very exciting conference. So at this point, I am excited to turn it over to our presenter today. So Alicia Morse Campbell is the Director of Volunteer Expertise Hub at Habitat for Humanity. She's joined by co-presenters and a panel of speakers. And so I'm going to turn it over to her and let her take it from here and do all of the introductions. So Alicia, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can take it over.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everyone see that?
We can see it.
Perfect. I might need to move it over a little bit so I can see as well. All right, great. All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alicia Morse Campbell, and I'm the chair of the Advocacy Committee with Alive. And I'm so excited to speak with all of you today and to hear from our amazing panel about our professional, advocating for our profession and our professional selves. With me today, I have Colin Kind, who will present the first half of the session today, and then we will roll into some awesome tips and talk a little bit about our strategy to advocating for our profession, and then we will hear from our awesome panel. So I will turn it over to Colin to introduce himself.
Hello. While I introduce myself, real quick, Alicia, if we can reshare right now, we have a split view where we're seeing notes and the presentation. So I just want to make sure we fix that real quick. But
So
hello,
sorry.
I'm very excited to be co-hosting or co-presenting with Alicia today. It's been a joy to be a part of the advocacy committee. So I'm just really excited to be here. I do have a CVA. I'm a volunteer manager, so woohoo. Happy belated International Volunteer Managers Day, if nobody told you. And yeah, thank you for coming today, and we're excited to get started. All right, so first, I want to make sure that we can introduce our incredible committee because it's, of course, not just Alicia or myself, it's an entire incredible team. So we got Alicia, Emily, Allie, Cheryl, Lynn, myself. I also want to point out, and we have Susan, Nikki, Rob, Katie, and Megan. But on this side, I would just want to point out that we also have these subcommittees. And so Emily's the main person for our standards committee. Then we have impact awards as well for the subcommittee. The CVA study group also is another one. And so that's been really, really great. So a little bit about our purpose, right? So what we're all about is making sure that we can promote the field of volunteer management. And we really want to make sure that we are supporting the leaders in volunteer engagement and helping foster the new generations of volunteer leaders coming into the field as well. And our commitment. So we recognize and celebrate the impact on the field, serving as trustworthy resource and standard for the industry, developing professional education that crosses all learning styles and needs, breaking down industry silos and exploring new areas to impact and influence, and addressing misconceptions and providing value to those who manage volunteers, right? Just the other day, yet again, I met a new person who asked the very innocent question of, "So are you a volunteer who manages volunteers?" And I was like, "No, no, this is actually a career. This is a job." And I was able to explain that. But remember, people just don't always know. And that's part of why our advocacy committee is here to help advocate. All right, let's go on. Okay, so we're going to talk about the big picture next, right? And so for today's conversation, our purpose is to, again, we're highlighting that volunteer management is so much more than just coordinating humans, right? It is a profession and it's rooted in the strategy, leadership, and impact that we make. We're going to learn how to shift our language today, right? So Alicia and our incredible panelists are going to really be able to help highlight some useful terms and phrases and just ways to advocate for yourself in this field in maybe a way you weren't familiar with before today. And so what you're going to walk away with, you're going to understand and affirm volunteer management as a skilled and credible profession. We're going to explore strategies to advocate for the profession in today's evolving nonprofit landscape. As we know, there's a lot changing and going on right now, so we want to make sure that we kind of keep up with the times and evolve and adapt as much as we can as well. And then we're going to apply strengths-based language to describe the value and impact of volunteer management. All right, so big picture, here we go. So for Menti, I'm going to have you all start getting started with joining Menti, whether you want to do it on your phone or a different browser tab, whatever you prefer. But it's menti.com and the code is 86160424. So that's the code that's at the top of the screen there. But just so we can get started loading that up. But here's our first question is we want to talk about what is a belief you or others have about the profession of volunteer management. All right. And then on this slide, please use the code at the top of the screen. We accidentally have two codes in there, but the correct one is going to be the one that's at the very top, the 8616 code. I believe there's supposed to be a word cloud popping up, but I'm not seeing it yet. Are you seeing it on your end, Alicia? Okay.
I am
Uh,
not.
What we can do, just so that we can kind of reroute as we go through this, is in the meantime, while we see if we can work out that, can everybody drop your word in the chat? So let's just use the chat box and rely on that for just a moment. And let's talk about that big picture, right? While we're getting some answers into the chat, um, yes, thank you, Sydney. Achieving our mission. I love that. Achieving our mission is really a big part of why I even like to be a part of what we do, right? Is helping contribute to this mission. I love that. Thank you, Amy. Building capacity of organizations, because without volunteers, these organizations can't function and grow on the capacity level that we really need to be successful, especially in today's times. I like that, Nikki. Integral. I like it. Thank you. Okay, so big picture, right? Building credibility starts with volunteer administrators assessing, understanding, and being confident in their own value and having a strategic understanding of the critical role leaders and volunteers play within organizations, the community, and society at large. Ooh, Randy, I like that. Extending our organization's reach and visibility. Beautiful. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead on to the next slide. So the elephant in the room. Can we imagine for a sec what could we be possibly talking about? What's the elephant in the room right now? So what's changing? Pretty much everything, right? I don't think any of us can fully keep up right now, and that's a lot for us to navigate, right? So again, give ourselves a pat on the back for navigating the chaos. But government and policy, right? As we all know, this seems to be changing every day and it impacts all sorts of organizations in different ways, right? Food banks are going to be affected differently than other organizations right now, and all of those things change. Of course, our volunteers too. So there's volunteers, right, who they can't volunteer anymore because they actually have to get a second job now because they can't afford to make ends meet, right? And so then we're having a harder time recruiting volunteers because the volunteers that are available aren't actually available anymore because they need to work. Priorities shifts within organizations, right? And so that's a big one. If your priority in your organization is over here and you're like, wait, but we need help with volunteers too. We need to really be mindful of those priority shifts happening. The need, again, it's becoming greater every day. I myself work at a organization that is a food bank and social service center. And so I'm kind of on the front lines right now of seeing how much the need is increasing every day, especially for food services. We are seeing so many people, and especially a lot of government employees now that are not receiving income, right? They need help too. And so organizations like ours are trying to step up, which is then a lot to juggle. And societal changes. So the need for community connection is so important, especially through COVID and everything like that. A lot of us really kind of realize that isolation does not feel good. Sometimes we don't want to people, and that's okay. But isolation doesn't feel good. And building that community and really being able to connect with people on that level is so important. All right. So then what's not changing? I like this slide a lot. So what's not changing is again, the understanding of our role and our purpose. That's not changing. We know how important we are and we're going to keep learning all about it too. The ideology that anyone can do it, right? The investment in skilled professionals. We are still investing there, right? The conversations we have with leadership, colleagues, family, and friends, right? I love this. Those conversations are so vital. If we're not talking to people about what our experience is or what's going on, things aren't going to change. That feedback is not going to get across if we're not sharing that, right? People don't always know you're overwhelmed until you say, "Hey, I'm actually juggling all these invisible things. Can you help?" So let's be mindful of that too. And then this last one is how people define and understand volunteerism, right? Traditional versus non-traditional and formal versus informal. And then, of course, how did we get here, right? So we really want to talk about how did we end up in this field a little bit? How did you explain the field of volunteer management and engagement in your circle, right? Um, I really want to hear about that because I'll share for myself. I accidentally ended up in volunteer management. I think I've shared that before with folks. I knew what I was signing up to an extent. I just didn't fully understand what the role really was. And so it was a beautiful, happy accident because I absolutely love it. I always tell people if I could volunteer every day for the rest of my life and somehow pay my bills, I'd be doing that, but we can't do that, right? And so here I am. But then explaining to people what I do was really hard at first, right? And I was like, how do I explain what I do? And it took me a while. And I remember at one point, somebody said volunteer administrators wear just as many hats as Snoop Dogg did to the Paris Olympics. Because if anyone saw, Snoop Dogg wore such incredible outfit to every single different event, right? And volunteer managers, we wear like 20 different hats. The easiest way to actually summarize it, though, is volunteer HR, right? And so that's how I usually just summarize it in the easiest way. But again, it's kind of funny trying to explain this to circles who might not be familiar with nonprofit or volunteerism. Sydney, my motto is helping people help people. I like that. I like that a lot. That's really wonderful. All right. Anyone else want to share? All right. Well, we will jump into advocate, right? So I think now we get to jump into the how to, and I get to pass back over to our lovely Alicia, who is our primary host for the day. So thank you all for having me. But Alicia, I'll let you take over.
Thank you so much, Colin. I really appreciate you leading and setting the stage for our conversation today. And everyone that's in the chat, please continue to pop things in the chat if something stands out to you, if something really resonates with you, or if you disagree. Please keep the conversation going. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we do this, how we do this work, and how do we advocate for ourselves. So there are many steps to this, but we're going to focus on the first four, which are creating professional strategy, integrating learning into our plan, the importance of belonging to a professional community, and then pivoting our language, which directly correlates with how we communicate internally within our organizations and outwardly to the public and to people who are closest to us. So first thing I want to note is that Rome was not built in a day, and neither will your professional strategy. I put this in there because just like we strategize for our volunteer programs, we need to put that same effort into our profession and into our personal development and our personal strategy. It's not something that you can just think of and execute right away. It requires that same level of thoughtfulness and an understanding as any other strategy. Also, start small and build upon it. Again, our strategy should be something that's buildable. It should be something that we inch towards too. It's not something that you can say, I'm going to do today, and by the end of January, I will have all I need. It could be that, but very rarely that's the case. And the reason we want to start small is because we can hold ourselves accountable to it, and others can hold us accountable to those small steps as opposed to those big giant leaps. And then also be open to pivoting. That's the part of strategy. We may need to pivot. We may realize halfway through that there are other skills that we're really looking for. There's other things that we may need to invest in and look into to really get us to where we want to be as an individual and as a profession. So first one, creating a professional strategy. Why does this matter? First and foremost, it helps us build a pathway for ongoing professional development and provides a sense of worth for us as well. And all of those lead into career satisfaction. We get excited when we are investing in our professional strategy. It gives us a sense of value, and therefore it moves us from doing something that we thought was short term into long term. It also helps create a professional identity for ourselves and for our profession. So there are the value add to our professional identity. It creates a sense of understanding. It really solidifies us as leaders in volunteer management and volunteer engagement. So it creates that professional identity for ourselves within our workplace as well as the profession as a whole. And then the understanding of the value and contributions to the profession. So this is for everyone else. This is for everyone who says, like Colin shared earlier, so you volunteer to support volunteers. It adds that level of understanding when we really invest in that strategy and we're able to communicate who we are, what we do to the outward world, to the public. So how do we do this? First and foremost, you have to know your why and be able to communicate it. As we all know, sometimes our strategy requires buy-in, especially from our leadership, especially from our colleagues. We need to be able to communicate why we think this is important, why we know that this is important, and why it requires the investment and support. So think about why do you do this? Why do you do this work? Why is it important to the organization? Why is it important to the public that we have volunteer leaders and be able to communicate that effectively? Internally, you want to think about you want to define your work by the business problems you solve and not by the tasks that you do. Because we do a lot of things. We wear multiple hats and we all have checklists of, okay, we have to do this today. We have to onboard this person. But what business problems are we solving? How are we making that direct connection to our organizational goals? We want to start thinking about building that, moving from language like recruitment to building mission critical capacity. We want to start using language that really resonates with our mission, resonates with our goals, and resonates with the community. Recruitment is just, it's a word, and it's a good word. There are a lot of ways to recruit, but what are we really doing with it? We are building mission critical capacity. We want to identify strategic priorities tied directly to our organizational outcomes. So looking at the priorities in your organization and how do you create that, my supervisor uses red thread or that dotted line to your professional strategy. Of course, align your work to the organization's strategic plan language. That's a big one. That's a really big one. We want to make sure that whatever strategy we're creating for ourselves, and when we're communicating that and when we're sharing that out, that we're utilizing the language that our organization uses. Identify internal champions and supporters who advocate with you. I can't say it enough, and we'll hear more about building a professional community, but internally, having those champions and those supporters who understand your work is really big, and having that support system internally is critical. And then, of course, consider developing stretch goals that increase your visibility. So thinking outside of your day-to-day, what is one thing that you can stretch? What's one area that you're really interested in stepping into or learning more about? So consider creating a stretch goal within your strategy. Next, integrating learning into our work plans. So why does this matter? It helps us shift our mindset and build consistency. So when we start thinking, okay, I'm integrating this into my work, it is a priority. It is just like any other vital task that I need to do. It shifts our mindset from this is something extra to this is a critical function of our work. And then it helps us build that consistency and we are able to keep up with it. Let's be honest, we get really busy. I know I get very busy. And it's really, really easy to drop our learning. It's really easy to say, okay, I can't do this right now. I'll pick it up at a later time. But what that does is that it stalls us as an individual, it stalls our learning and our growth, and it also doesn't showcase the value of this profession to those that need that buy-in. So we want to make sure that we're building it in. It increases the effectiveness, capacity, and our impact in our organization. It showcases our willingness to build our own capacity and showcase how the work that the learnings that we're taking, we're able to implement into our day-to-day work. And then, of course, it continues to position yourself as an SME in the field. So how do we do that? I love this one. Seek and utilize credible, industry relevant resources. And it's not just for yourself, but when you are integrating your learning into your work plan and when you're sharing with leadership why this is important, you want that backing. You want that backup to say, hey, this is industry standard. This is industry relevant. These are the changes that are happening that we're seeing all across the board. And so this is how this will support my growth and the growth of the organization moving forward. Set quarterly learning goals connected to your strategic priorities. And again, it's really easy to let this drop. It's really easy to forget about our learning. So it's setting aside that intentional time quarterly to set those goals and to focus on your strategic priorities is vital. Also, schedule protected professional development time. I am very, very lucky to be a part of an organization and a team that prioritizes this. So every quarter we have a day and it's a Friday, full day that we can focus solely on our professional development. And as a team leader, I always emphasize, please don't book meetings for, other work during that time. It has to be protected. And soon enough, people will see that because you're protecting this time, it is important. It is valuable. It has to happen. Experiment learnings with projects and document and communicate learnings with your leadership. So you want to take your learnings, you want to experiment with current projects that you have going on or ideas that you've been mulling around for a while. Document that, communicate that, and showcase to your leadership the value of those learnings and how they've been successful. And then, of course, track the ROI of the learning. What has changed? How have processes or systems improved because of this? How has your work day to day improved because of this? And what was the impact of it? And when we think of impact, we don't have to think big. We don't have to think major. But what's that little thing that has made a slight change or difference from that learning? Next, belonging to a professional community and why this matters. First and foremost, you're here, you're with Alive, so you're already on the right track. You're already doing this. But why does it matter? What's the purpose of this outside of, having a place to engage? Well, we know that professional isolation weakens our credibility as a profession. So we don't want to be alone or siloed in this. We want to make sure that we're building a sense of community any way that we can to showcase that credibility, and community strengthens that identity as volunteer leaders. It's a space for inspiration and motivation and accountability. This is where you find your accountability partner. This is where you get re-energized and motivated to create that plan and to advocate for the work that you do and the work that we all do in this space. And then, of course, it's an excellent resource for ongoing growth and learning opportunities because we're always learning. So, but what does this mean? How do we do this? So finding the professional community that actually works for you, okay? And I'm going to emphasize that works for you. Again, you're here, you're in the right place, you're with Alive. That is the first step. But we want to start thinking about what else. So you want to review your strategy and identify any networks, any areas that you want to build upon and move forward with. So outside of Alive, what other avenues or what other groups are out there, or even social media groups? I mean, there's tons of them out there that you can be a part of and continue to have conversation. So review your strategy and see what aligns. Then seek organizations that speak to your strategic language. What does that mean? When we don't want to just join stuff to join stuff. I will use an example. I am currently a part of a group that helps speaking, public speaking, and I really do enjoy it. It's fun for me. But over the last year and a half that I've been a part of this group, I've realized that as much as I want to build my confidence in my public speaking, I need much more support in my one-on-one small group speaking. I enjoy speaking to crowds. I enjoy doing things like this. I enjoy being on the stage, but one-on-one conversation, I struggle. It's hard. It's hard for me to concentrate because I'm balancing multiple things at one time. So thinking through that, we have to decide if this is the avenue I want to go in, and does this organization or does this group speak to my strategic language? Be in the room with the people who inspire you, being in the room where it happens. I love that because when we are following the people that inspire us, following the people who have really made this profession what it is, and there are so many of them that are part of Alive today and doing wonderful things around the world in the space of volunteer leadership. Um, when we are in those spaces, it inspires us, and it also helps us learn how they were able to navigate through the challenges that we're experiencing, how they're able to navigate their professional growth. And so being a part and being in the room where it happens is really important. Of course, choose spaces that challenge you to grow and not just share information. We love information shares. They're awesome. However, oftentimes we take that information, we're so inspired by it, and 2 days later, it's sitting on a desk and we're not taking action on it. So choose spaces that really challenge you and encourage you to step into that leadership. And then evaluate your circles as much as you review your strategy. You should be reviewing your personal strategy, your professional strategy frequently. And as part of that, review the circles that you're in, review the organizations that you're a part of, make that list of, what are you getting from it? What are the values that it's bringing to your work and to the profession? What are you gaining? And if it's not meeting that the strategic language, or it's not meeting your strategy, it's time to reevaluate. And yes, I see Emily put in the comments Alive, COPs, um, and functional specific communities and Dovias are the perfect places to find that professional network. And last but not least, before we go into our panel, pivoting the language about our skills and our work. Why does this matter? First, it helps leaders clearly understand the strategic relevance of our roles. We have to use language that resonates with the people we are working with and the people who decide what additional organizations we're involved in, or what trainings we received, or what education and ongoing learning that we get. We have to be able to speak clearly to that in a way that they understand. This also strengthens the credibility, the expertise, and professional value that we bring to the organization. So utilizing that language and beefing it up to from that recruitment to building mission critical capacity has a stronger is much more of a stronger statement than how we typically talk about our work. It builds deeper alignment with our mission, the work, and the field of volunteer engagement overall. And then, of course, it actually reflects what we do. As I said, we are, and we'll in the next slide, we'll go over some language. But when we really think about our day-to-day work, when we think about our overall impact in the community, in our organizations, in the profession, what is it that we really do and how are we communicating that? So when we say that, we want to think strategy and business case. We are capacity builders. We bring cost benefit value to our organizations and to our communities. We are in charge of operational continuity. By bringing in volunteers and by developing our volunteers and deepening that connection they have with our mission. We build retention. We're stakeholders. We build trust and brand loyalty. We impact mission scalability, and we provide all of these very vital and critical needs to the organization. This is really what we do. It goes beyond the cycle. This is what we do. And then when we talk about our professional skill set, we're talent developers. Through our orientations and through our trainings, we develop that talent that has long-term sustainability. We are change managers. We provide that level of impact to the community that gets them involved and makes our work and our missions move forward. We are people leaders, and I love using that. I have started using that I'm a people leader in my language when I talk about talk about my role. And then we are cross-functional bridge builders. Okay, we connect internally, externally, with the public. We are those bridge builders. We are the ones that go out there and make sure that people know who we are, what we do, and why they should be involved in our organization. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to introduce our lovely panelists. And please excuse me, I'm going to share my screen because or pause my screen for a second because I want to make sure that I'm introducing everyone properly. I had some of my notes up. And I am just so excited to introduce our panel today. I'm sorry, let me re-share my screen. All right, here we go. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce Allison Drennan. Allison holds a degree in psychology with a minor in women's studies from Vanderbilt University. She has worked in nonprofit management and volunteer engagement since 1998, serving as an fellow AmeriCorps member with Campus Compact in leadership roles at Habitat for Humanity International, and currently as a field representative in Georgia's 2nd Congressional District. A certified volunteer administrator since 2004 and a certified nonprofit management professional, Allison has been recognized nationally for her contributions to the field, receiving the Exemplary Leader Award from Alive in 2023, where she also served as a board member. An alumna of the American Express Leadership Academy, she was a founding member of a Georgia charter school and continues to serve on the governing board. Sydney Enns has over 15 years of volunteer engagement experience in service. As director of the volunteer engagement, she is responsible for helping recruit, train, and retain and recognize volunteers for all aging programs with the Tennessee Department of Disability and Aging Aging administers across the state. She is also the senior center liaison and assists the over 200 senior centers across Tennessee with resources to support older adults in their local communities. Sydney has a degree in recreation and sport management from Indiana State University and a master's in public administration from Tennessee State University, with certificates in nonprofit management from both universities. She completed her certified volunteer administrator credentials in April of 2021 and is proud to be counted among some of the top volunteer leaders in the world. As last but certainly not least, we have Nikki Price. Nikki is the mentor recruitment manager at College New Greater Cleveland, where she connects volunteers with opportunities to directly impact their community through mentorship. With a master's in public administration from CSU Levin College and a certification as a volunteer administrator, Nikki brings a global perspective to her work, gained through years of supporting volunteers and community initiatives, working with international nonprofits. And also, Nikki is a member of our Awesome Advocacy Committee. Thank you all for joining us today. So excited to hear from you. So we will jump right into the first question. And this is for all of you to share. In the presentation, we talked about how things are changing in the volunteer landscape and some things that haven't really changed over the last, or ever, many years, but ever in the field. How have you navigated through those changes and lack thereof as a volunteer leader? We'll start with you, Allison.
Thank you, Alicia. I think Colin said this at the top of the hour, but be ready for anything. I really like that part of your question here is how have you navigated lack of change, because I think that's something everyone can probably really relate to in this field. And the second thing I would say is have someone to connect with. I think I see Angela Williams on the call, Angela Williamson, and I'm glad to see her because I participated in Alive's mentor program a couple of years ago, and I participated with a lot of experience in the field as a mentee to understand, how to be a mentor. But I really appreciated being connected with Angela. I think we had similar levels of experience, but very different experience. And so that really being able to connect with her on a regular basis really helped me deal with some change that I was going through.
Wonderful, thank you. Sydney.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me on the panel. Appreciate it. I know one of the biggest changes I think we all went through was COVID. So for us in particular, there's always before COVID and after COVID, right? Like that's how we distinguish time now. Before COVID, across Tennessee and the Aging Network, volunteers were looked at as more of a nuisance than a help. I always got the, why are we doing this? We could be doing something else with our time, blah, blah, blah. And then COVID hit and everyone's like, where's our volunteers? And I was like, so we're important now, huh? And I kind of had a I told you so moment without saying I told you so. So through all those changes, and of course, as we get new policies and all that good stuff, I really took advantage of that to be the constant communicator for volunteerism and why it's important and why we need to not only recruit, but retain the people that we have and show the appreciation for our longevity in the programs. I'm also a baby sister, so I think that is a prerequisite of being a sibling because I love to talk about volunteerism and I may be annoying because I talk about it all the time. But I do think that that was a really positive strategy that helped me just kind of keep it at the forefront of people's minds of you want to serve more people, but you don't have any staff. Volunteers are a great capacity builder and just to advocate that way pretty consistently.
Thank you.
Well,
Nikki.
younger siblings unite, and I'm a big sister, so now I feel a little bit ganged up on Colin, and but it's okay. So I love this question, and it speaks to me on a really personal level because I kind of nodded to this in my intro, but I've been across the globe as a military spouse. So because of that experience and needing to change all the time due to relocations, I've had to kind of navigate through personal changes and job changes, but then volunteer, world changes just by being nimble and agile. And I think, we've always joked that we've needed to be Semper Gumby, always flexible. But I think that I've taken that on. So I think that's really what has guided me through the changes, in the landscape, and then also when things aren't changing. We know that in order to work with our teams and to kind of create some space for them when things might get a little bit dull, how might we be able to zhuzh it up a little bit? So Semper Gumby it is. Let's bring out the balloons and boas. So, always flexible. That's kind of just my mantra.
Awesome. Thank you. So we'll stick with you, Nikki, for the next question. And once you answer, we'll have others respond to that. So what steps did you take to develop a professional strategy that aligns with your goals and values as a volunteer manager?
That is such a great question. And I wish I got to listen to everybody else's answers first, but I will take a stab at this. So I think that one of the first things that I did was to become a CVA, to really join organizations that aligned with what I wanted to pursue and what I wanted to become professionally. And then once that was done, obviously I'm on the advocacy committee at Alive, and I'm involved locally, and I try to pursue things locally that will not just elevate me professionally, but will also, I guess, there are those stretch goals that might not be something that you think, oh yes, absolutely, a volunteer leader is going to get her PMP, but I'm halfway through that. And so I think that those are the types of things that I like to look for, things that might grow me professionally. And luckily, my employers have always been supportive of that.
Wonderful. I love that you mentioned that as we continue to kind of look outside of the box of what other skills would support this work, the PMP and change management. We have with the team that I'm a part of, we have quite a few people who've taken change management courses. I mean, it just really elevates our role in our field. So thank you. Allison or Sydney, would you like to share any steps you've taken to develop a professional strategy that aligns with your goals and values?
Well, congratulations, Nikki, on working through your PMP. I know that's not an easy program, so
No.
that's great. And I did something similar. I last year I earned my master's degree from Indiana University in public affairs, public administration, and it took me 5 years. So I was just doing one course a semester, but that was something that was I think I found important to look beyond, there's no university program that certifies you as a degree program in volunteer management, but that seemed to me something that was close, but also kind of broadened my worldview of how volunteer management fits into our communities and the work that people do in other industries. um, I think something else that I've tried to do is take advantage of all the opportunities that were available to develop my skills. So, for a number of years, I wrote articles for the Engage Journal. So, if you're not subscribed to the Engage Journal, I would recommend that. And I know they're always looking for people to write, and they're very good at helping you. So, if you've got something to share about the field or something you're thinking about, that would be a great opportunity to think about aligning your professional goals and kind of stretching your comfort zone if you're not a writer. And the last thing I would say is build relationships outside of volunteer management colleagues. So I totally agree with Alicia that Alive is an exceptional opportunity to build relationships within the field. But if you're looking for a job in volunteer management and you have only built relationships with the people in those volunteer management roles and they're the ones who leave, then the rest of the people at those organizations don't know about your skills. So that's what I would say. Try to build relationships outside of these specific roles.
I love that, Allison. I love that. Having a well-rounded community with different skill sets, just different backgrounds and knowledge really helps pour into our own fields and our own professions. So I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I
Sydney.
echo everything that Nikki and Allison have said. I got my CVA in 2021. Before 2021, I was always I can do this on my own. I can go it alone. I don't want to bother people, even though I'm an annoying little sister, and I love big sisters because you all tell me what to do, right? Um, so when I took the CVA the first time, I didn't pass, and I was like, I can't do this alone. So I rallied my people around me. We started a CVA study group, just similar to what Alive has, and we've continued that twice a year for the last 5 years. And just last year, no, 2 years ago in 2023, we wanted more people to get their CVA in Tennessee, so we started a scholarship fund. So anyone in Tennessee who wants to obtain their CVA, we're offering a $200 scholarship right now, so paying half that fee. But part of the requirement is they attend our study group, so we can help them be successful. So it works for everyone. I'm also a continuous learner. I'm not much of a book reader. I have dyslexia, so I love a good audiobook. I love a good webinar series. But I also started a webinar series for volunteer engagement in Tennessee. And I know Karina's on and I know Susan's on. So we get a lot of CVAs and other guest speakers that come on to our series. It started small with kind of the Tennessee Aging Network, and now I'm excited to say we've gone global. So I always thought I was the only one going through certain things, which, you have those moments where you feel like you're alone and no one knows kind of what I'm going through or what struggles were happening. But gathering those group of people, both in the field and outside of the field, like Allison said, and just having that support system really helps educating yourself, educating others, and really just getting the information out there for everyone to be successful.
Thank you so much, Sydney. We're going to keep with you for a second. And you talked about your ongoing learning and your commitment to integrating these learnings into your work. So how have you integrated ongoing learning and professional development into your work plan and goals? And what conversations did you have to ensure that learning was included in your work?
Absolutely. So I'm fortunate enough to have a very strong supervisor and organization that promotes continuing education. But we always have to have that justification as to why we want to go to, say, Points of Light, to the Alive conference in California. You know, it's a pretty big chunk of our budget. So having that justification, sharing the networking capabilities that we have. I always mention Karina and Susan, and I'm like, I'm going to go meet these individuals in person who have presented on our series, who are the subject matter experts in their states. So additional networking opportunities, um, telling them when I get back from wherever I go that they've invested in me going to, what I learned and how I'm going to incorporate that into the webinar series that I do, or whatever different programs that we have going on. So they know, like you kind of mentioned earlier, it's not just kind of a brainstorming session and it's sitting on the desk. I come back with these actionable items that I work into my, we call it a individual performance plan, or kind of my job description. So they know that all that information I'm bringing back is going to be utilized quickly after, you know, coming back from that experience.
Thank you. Nikki, how have you integrated ongoing learning into your work plan and goals, and what conversations did you have to ensure that was included?
Yeah, so like I should say fortunately, not unfortunately, but fortunately, we are also a really learning-based organization. We have to be because we're based in education, so it would be silly if we weren't. Um, so it's actually, quite embedded into our culture. So, we do need to justify the expense. We, of course, need to, show that there's an ROI, a return on investment. But we have organizational teach back models. So if we go to if we go to a workshop, if we go to a convention, it is expected that we'll come back and we'll lead, a inter-office professional development that anyone can attend. We incorporate it into our professional goals, and it's one of those things that either I share it directly with leadership or the rest of the team, that we try to make it as actionable as possible. Of course, expenses are expenses. And so I don't just get to go to, don't just get to go to Points of Light for the fun of it. But as long as we can show that it has a positive effect, on what we're doing here, the organization supports it.
So, thank you. And Allison, can you share a little bit about the conversations you had to ensure learning was included into your work plan and goals? And I'm going to add to your question how you've successfully made the case for that financial investment in your growth as a volunteer leader.
So my current role with the House of Representatives, it's not directly volunteer engagement, but I am still working in volunteer engagement and volunteer roles in the community. So it's still something that is important to me to continue to develop, but it's not something that I have a lot of opportunity in my professional role to have the organization's support training costs. So what I've done is work with my supervisor. So there's no employee enrichment budget for training at all. There's training, there's like required training. But as far as training that I decide I want to do for my professional development, there's no budget for that. But there is a budget for travel. And there is an opportunity for me to negotiate with my supervisor for time off. So I've while I haven't been able to negotiate extra money for that, I think the money for travel and the extra time off have helped me integrate things that wouldn't normally be something I could add to my goals, something that I could add. So, for example, I'm a volunteer with CASA, and CASA has a lot of excellent training, but it's always during the workday. So I've been able to participate in some of that and not have to eat into my my leave time.
Awesome. And I love that, especially your perspective for those who may not have work with an organization that has that ability to provide that additional funding or create that investment, how you've been able to negotiate that with leadership. So that's awesome. Thank you.
And I think if you look, there's a lot of free training available. I mean, I live in a pretty small rural community, but if your organization has relationships with the city, with the Chamber of Commerce, with trade associations, those may not be trainings that you normally get to take advantage of. But if you speak with your supervisor, that they may have relationships with those organizations, and you may be able to participate without any cost.
Awesome. Great. All right. So we're gonna start with you again, Allison. And the next question is, in what ways have you adapted your language to better communicate the value of your skill, your role, and professional growth into leadership?
I really like this question. I think language is so important. I think a couple of the slides that you all shared talked about pivoting, and I've been working so much in agriculture and farming that the first thing that comes to my mind is a pivot, is the long metal thing in the field that irrigates the crops. And so that's kind of, the top of mind to me was not pivot as change, but like pivot as nurturing the crops. But
Ooh.
I think something that you could do around the language and making sure that you're speaking to people in their language is use ChatGPT. So I just kind of went in and put in this very generic overall, like, I'm a volunteer manager, but I want to explain to people what I'm doing in their language, and it spit out, I mean, pages and pages. So for example, instead of saying volunteer program, you may think about community engagement initiative, workforce development program, operations or service initiative. So, I think that that's a tool that can really help you adapt either in general or if you have a specific industry that you're trying to speak to or look for a new role in.
Thank you. Sydney.
I think what I've really been trying to do is change my language from saying I want to do this or I want to do that to we. So yes, I want to go to the conference, but because we can do so much with this additional education. So it's not we're bringing the team together, even leadership. We can do this together if we can do XYZ. So trying to remove I, even though I just said I a million times and before I even started talking. But really like we can grow in our skills. We can grow these roles. The data that we collect, we can use that to advocate. It's really exciting. I just found out yesterday that our commissioner went to the governor to do our budget hearing and used my proposal that I didn't know was going to happen. So using that we and all the data that we collected, he went to in front of our governor and asked for $1 million to support volunteer services in the aging network across Tennessee. So having that data and using that we language that, together we can make things happen. I can make it happen in my personal growth. I can help it make it happen in your growth and the program's growth. I think has been really beneficial for me in the last 5 years, if not decade.
I love that. I love that the emphasis on that it's not just a benefit to you, but it's a benefit to everyone to invest in the work that you're doing. It's a we. It's not just an I. So I love that. And Nikki, how
So
have you adapted your language?
yeah, so a lot like Sydney, and I love that Sydney talked about data because I've always said that, as volunteer managers and volunteer leaders, very often we are very much in touch with the softer side of the programming. And sometimes leadership is very focused on the business side, the harder side, if you will, of the business case. So bringing data in, but still bringing that softer side of storytelling in, and so bringing them together. And so data-driven storytelling. So we can still tell the story of our volunteers and the outcomes and the impact, but making sure that it is infused with some data. So really articulating that in a way that is impactful and speaking the language that leadership wants to hear. So if they're speaking in data, we've got to throw data in there. But let's also make sure that we're true to ourselves and we're true to the story and the impact that our volunteers have. So that's something that I've really worked on doing.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, last question for everyone before we go to any questions in the chat. For those of you in the chat, please start typing up your questions for our panel, and we will get to as many as we can before we close out. But last question for all of you, and we'll start with you, Allison. What's one takeaway that you would want someone who is new to the field or new to the profession, or maybe it has been in the profession for some time, but is really wanting to take that next step to advocate for themselves and their role, and for the work that we do as volunteer leaders? What's one takeaway you would share?
I would say no one is going to do it for you, and it should be all about you. So I think as volunteer managers, we're always worried about our volunteers, our organization, our families, right? But that we should take the time and do it for ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you. Sydney, what's your one takeaway?
Absolutely. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question. If you're not sure how to advocate for yourself, we've talked about the networks that we have available. If you're new, join some of those networks. I can type my email in the chat box. If you're new, I'm happy to be your network. And hey, I'm looking to advocate for a salary increase. I'm looking to advocate for a volunteer recognition budget or whatever it might be. A lot of us have been in the field for a long time and have done those things. So reinventing the wheel on your own is just going to cause you more stress and frustration. So do your best to reach out to those individuals. I'm just on some Facebook groups that are just volunteer professionals, volunteer coordinators, and I will randomly post a question and get some feedback from people I've never really even met before. I'm planning to try and do some presentations for our webinar series next year, and I plan to just post out there, hey, anyone willing to speak for me on the series? So just finding those networks, even if you don't know the people face to face. Facebook is an easy way to test it out and see, like, will people actually respond to my question? So if you're a little nervous on that one-on-one interaction, it's a little less scary way, but use those resources all around you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Nikki, what's your one takeaway?
I would say that just remember that you as a volunteer manager, as a volunteer leader, have such a wide and diverse and adaptable skill set. You are such a dynamo unto yourself. You don't have to do it all by yourself, but just want to make sure that you don't have to do it all by yourself, but you really are a dynamic department unto yourself. And I've said it before in our advocacy meetings, but I always say that we really are truly a one-person cross-functional team all by ourselves. Volunteer managers are a one-person cross-functional team because we can do it all.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful panel for sharing your experience and your expertise and your knowledge with our fun group today. Are there any questions in the chat? I'm going to, or let's see, I'm not sure if I can take anyone off mute. Let me see what my options are. Oh, yes. So if you have any questions and would like to come off of mute, just raise your hand and I will unmute you.
I have a question for Nikki, because you mentioned your moving around as a military family. Have you always worked in volunteer management roles, or how's that work when you're moving around?
Yeah, I did always work in volunteer management roles. yeah, you sometimes at the same nonprofit, Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, which has, offices at most military bases, sometimes at the USO, sometimes at smaller nonprofits that were just, local. So I was able to cobble together a career.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, Nikki would be a good person to reach out to if you need help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll put my email in the chat. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Are there questions from the group that if you are interested, please raise your hand and I'll take you off of mute. Or feel free to drop it in the chat. Or are there any insights that really resonated with you today if you'd like to share that as well?
Personally, I have to say, I will never get over Nikki's one-liner of the cross-functional, and now I'm gonna short circuit and not remember it, but it's beautiful and I love it. It's magical and I love it.
I added it to the chat. It's where one person cross-functional team. Susan has a question for everyone. Share with us your greatest failure and how that became a learning experience. That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a hard question. For me, what comes to mind is in my current role as a field representative, I'm out often at events representing the congressman when he's not there, and there's a process that the office goes through when you're invited to an event to understand what you're expected to do when you're there. And it will say you're expected to give remarks or you're not. And if you're expected to give remarks, then there will be remarks prepared. But oftentimes people don't say that they want remarks, but they will call you up. And I wasn't prepared for that the first time it happened. And, you have to really be on your toes about what's going on and really careful about what you say. So I would say I pretty much failed the first time I had to do that. But now, before I go, always I'm prepared to be called up no matter what happens.
Love that. That's awesome. What's the saying? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Sydney, I think you were going to share as well.
Yeah, the one thing I can think of, and I'm sure there's many other failures I just don't want to think about right now, or I've just blocked them out that I don't want to share with an audience. But it was during COVID, and I was getting a lot of pressure to recruit volunteers, and our communications team who didn't communicate with me very well, and I can say that because they're no longer with the communications team. Um, they decided to do this big campaign without discussing it with me. And well, we need volunteers here, here, and here. And I was like, that's literally the last place that we need volunteers. Like it was in a metro area here in Nashville. They're like, we need to focus on Nashville. I was like, no, we are oversaturated. The next thing I know, in the next 2 weeks, we had 300 volunteers come in for the Nashville area. And our partners were like, we can't use any of these individuals. So it just made me feel, and it probably didn't to the volunteers, but that just was it. I felt like a failure because I didn't advocate, I didn't stand up and be like, knock it off. Whether it would have worked or not, I don't know. But it definitely made us look to those 300 plus people that were asking for this, and then you can't use us. And it just was kind of a stain on our volunteer program in such a crucial time when we need volunteers in other parts of the state, that it just made us look really bad. So had those other conversations kind of going forward of, hey, we need to do targeted. We don't need to do just general. And it worked for a little while, and it's definitely grown more and more to a more realistic strategy than oversaturating a certain market.
Thank you so much. As you were talking, one came to mind. I wouldn't say that it was a failure, but a bit of a regret. I worked for an organization that my role directly reported to our development director. And before I started in that role, my previous boss, who was incredibly supportive of me moving on, but said that I really should advocate for my role to be a director role on its own and have a place outside of development. And that stuck with me for a long time, but I never took the step to advocate for that. I remained under, and I want to preface this that my supervisor in that role was wonderful and very, very supportive. But I realized that in my conversations with leadership and with our executive director and even with board members, the conversation led all the way back to our volunteers fundraising, which was a function of, it was a volunteer role, but there was so much more to the needs that we had with our volunteers, but it never translated that, hey, yes, we do have volunteers that are doing this work, but also here are all of the other things that our volunteers are supporting with. And so I didn't take the advice to advocate for that and to or really even think through, even if this role did not shift into as part of into that leadership role within the org, how do I emphasize the importance of investing in our volunteers outside of that fundraising space? So it still it haunts me. It haunts me today. Still, that I didn't take that step, but I did when I left. I did share that feedback and share how for the next person coming in, what would be very helpful for someone in this role, as well as how we showcase their work to leadership and externally. So, are there any other questions? I'm seeing lots of comments. Amy shared that she loved the reminder to talk about the problems you solve, not just the tasks. A fail is only a first attempt in learning. Another group question. Do you have a favorite book, website, blog, or newsletter you'd recommend to leaders of volunteers, or that leaders of volunteers should read?
So I already mentioned the Engage Journal, but what I like about that is that it's global, so you get perspectives from outside of the United States. And then, I mean, Susan Ellis's From the Top Down is always my go-to book.
Love that. I think we all have a copy of the
You have to.
somewhere. If you don't, get a copy.
You need it.
I really enjoyed The New Breed, Understanding and Equipping the 21st Century Volunteer by Jonathan and Thomas McKee. It's a father-son, I believe, who wrote the book. And I said earlier, I'm not a big book reader, but this one I actually read. So take that as a really good review. It's a lot of different storytelling. It's not like a textbook. It's here's the situation and kind of how they worked through it. So you learn from the experiences that this father and son had.
Love that. Thank you.
It's kind of spicy, but I really like Nonprofit AF by Voulet. It's not just about volunteers, it's about the nonprofit, landscape as a whole, but it is kind of spicy. So I just wanted to be very, open about that.
I have to, we like spicy. I have to look that one up. And Diane also shared anything right, Chip and Dan Heath, and The Power of Moments. Yes, yes, awesome book. Great. All right. Oh, and Sydney shared her book in the chat. If there are any other readings or blogs that you all think would be really helpful, please drop them in the chat. But I want to thank everyone for joining today. Again, this is a profession. This is something that we really need to value and change our language about and invest in and get others to understand that it takes more than just a smiling face to do this work. It takes more than just pulling in volunteers, but it really takes thought and skill and a lot of work to do what we do every day and do it so gracefully and ethically and honestly. So I really appreciate the insight. Thank you so much, Allison, Sydney, Nikki, and Colin for your insight today. Thank you to everyone who shared in the chat, and thank you to the Advocacy Committee for working to get this Alive Academy up and going. So if you have any questions, please reach out to any of us. We are available to support you and help you build your community. And I think that's it. I turn it over to Amy for any closing remarks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a really great session, and just a reminder to stop and invest, right? Invest in ourselves so we can continue to move this profession forward, and the joy of learning and sharing together. I always love ending with a good book recommendation, so I appreciate that, especially. Just a preview of our upcoming December Alive Academy. We will be talking about pausing for change and breaking through status quo problem solving with Heather Hiscox. So please join us for that on December 2nd. And here is our feedback. So if you have feedback for our event today, we would love it if you would scan that QR code and share that with us. You can do a multitude of things. Alive is here to support your professional development. So on our website, you'll find communities of practice, the National Summit, volunteer opportunities, membership resources. Please use us as a resource and connect. We would love to have you grow and learn and be a part of our professional network. Okay, and with that, I think we will end just a few minutes early and let everybody have a couple minutes of their day back, but feel free to sit in your space and take that time to think about what we just talked about. So I appreciate you all being here. We hope to see you next month.